The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of our penthouse terrace, sending crystal shards dancing across the Italian tiles. But it wasn't the sound of breaking glass. It was the laughter that followed. "Oh my God, Trent, you're terrible," Vivian giggled, her perfectly manicured hand covering her mouth in mock horror. My wife of 8 years stood there in her designer cocktail dress, surrounded by our so-called friends at what was supposed to be our anniversary party, laughing at the man who had just called me a placeholder. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Trent Delacroix, trust fund baby, failed entrepreneur, and apparently my wife's new favorite person, raised his replacement glass high above the crowd. His Princeton ring caught the evening light as he grinned at the 30-odd guests scattered across our rooftop terrace. "No, seriously, everyone, let's be honest here," Trent continued, his voice carrying that particular brand of arrogance that only comes with inherited wealth and zero consequences. "Jack's a nice guy and all, but let's face it, he's just keeping Vivian's seat warm until the real thing comes along. A placeholder husband for a placeholder marriage." The crowd erupted in knowing chuckles and raised glasses. Sienna Morrison, Vivian's college roommate and current social media influencer, practically cackled as she held up her phone to record the moment. Greg Hartwell from Vivian's law firm nodded approvingly while sipping his scotch. Even the Pemberton twins, who I'd helped get jobs at the city planning office, were smirking behind their wine glasses. I stood frozen by the outdoor kitchen, a plate of perfectly grilled steaks in my hands, watching my wife toast to my humiliation. The Atlantic breeze carried the smell of salt and expensive perfume across the terrace, but all I could taste was bile. "Trent, stop it," Vivian said. But she was still laughing, still raising her glass, still looking at him like he'd just delivered the wittiest observation in human history instead of publicly castrating her husband at his own anniversary party. "What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Trent shrugged, taking a long sip of the Dom Perignon I'd bought for the occasion. "Vivian's a partner at Morrison, Klein & Associates. She drives a BMW, has a corner office overlooking the harbor, and makes more in a month than most people see in a year. And Jack? Well, Jack fixes things." More laughter, louder this time. I set the plate down carefully on the granite countertop, my hand surprisingly steady despite the rage building in my chest, like a pressure cooker about to blow. 20 years of building my construction business from nothing. 20 years of turning my mechanical engineering degree into a multi-million-dollar company that specialized in high-end renovations and custom builds. 20 years of creating the wealth that bought this penthouse, that BMW, and the lifestyle these parasites were enjoying. But to them, I was just a guy who fixed things. "I mean, look at this place." Trent gestured grandly at our 4,000-square-foot penthouse with its panoramic harbor views and custom everything. "This is all Vivian, right? The lawyer money, the connections, the class. Jack just maintains it." Vivian finally seemed to realize that maybe, just maybe, this was going too far. She glanced in my direction, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, embarrassment, or just annoyance that her boy toy was making a scene. "Okay, that's enough," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Jack works very hard." "Oh, I'm sure he does," Trent nodded sagely. "Placeholder husbands usually do. They have to earn their keep somehow." The crowd dissolved into fresh peals of laughter. Greg actually slapped his knee. Sienna's phone never stopped recording. And that's when something inside me snapped. Not visibly. I'd learned long ago that showing weakness to sharks only makes them hungrier. But something fundamental shifted in my brain, like tumblers falling into place in a very expensive lock. I looked around at these people, these friends who'd eaten my food, drunk my wine, and enjoyed my hospitality for years, and realized I was seeing them clearly for the first time. They weren't laughing with Trent. They were laughing at me. and they were enjoying every second of it. Vivian caught my eye across the terrace and gave me a little wave, as if nothing had happened. As if her husband hadn't just been publicly humiliated by a trust fund brat, while she giggled and toasted along. The diamond wedding ring I'd bought her, the one that cost me 3 months of profits, sparkled in the setting sun. I picked up my phone and walked inside, leaving the laughter behind me. The penthouse felt different now, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. The custom kitchen with its professional-grade appliances that I'd installed myself, the hardwood floors I'd personally selected and supervised, the crown molding, the built-in bookcases, the hidden lighting systems, all of it designed and executed by me, paid for with my money, in a building where I'd negotiated the purchase price down by $200,000 because I'd spotted structural issues the previous inspector had missed. But I was just the placeholder. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Margaret Chen, the real estate agent who'd helped us buy this place 5 years ago. It was almost 9 p.m. on a Saturday, but Margaret was the kind of agent who never really stopped working. She answered on the second ring. "Jack, is everything okay?" "Margaret, I need you to list the penthouse. Tomorrow." There was a pause. "Your penthouse? Jack, it's Saturday night. Are you sure you want to?" "I'm sure. How fast can we move on this?" Another pause, longer this time. "Well, the market's hot right now. Properties like yours, we could probably have it under contract within a week, maybe less. But Jack, shouldn't you discuss this with Vivian first?" I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows at my wife, who was now posing for selfies with Trent while our guests continued their party. She had her hand on his chest, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think that'll be necessary." "Okay," Margaret said carefully. "What's your target price?" I thought about the mortgage, nearly paid off thanks to my business success. I thought about the renovations, the custom work, the premium location. I thought about the current market rates in our neighborhood. "Listed at 4.2 million, I said, "but I'll take anything over 3.8. Margaret whistled softly. "That's aggressive, but doable. Jack, are you sure everything's all right?" Through the window, I watched Trent dip Vivian dramatically while the crowd cheered. Her dress rode up slightly, and she didn't bother to adjust it. She was having too much fun being the center of attention. "Everything's perfect, Margaret. I'll sign the paperwork first thing Monday morning." I hung up and walked back outside, where the party was still in full swing. Nobody seemed to have noticed my absence. Why would they? Placeholders are forgettable by definition. I grabbed a beer from the outdoor refrigerator and leaned against the railing, looking out over the harbor. The city lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness, and somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn echoed across the water. "Jack!" Vivian appeared at my elbow, slightly drunk and flushed from dancing. "There you are. Where did you disappear to?" "Just making a phone call," I said, taking a sip of my beer. "Oh." She looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for me to elaborate. When I didn't, she pressed closer, her hand finding my arm. "You're not upset about Trent's little joke, are you? You know he doesn't mean anything by it. He's just, you know how he is." "Yeah," I said, still looking out at the water. "I'm starting to figure that out." She squeezed my arm. "Good. Because honestly, Jack, you're being a little sensitive tonight. It's just harmless fun." "Harmless fun. Right." "Vivian!" Trent's voice carried across the terrace. "Come settle an argument for us. Sienna says your first case was a divorce, but I told her it was corporate law." Vivian's face lit up. "Oh, that's a good story." She started to pull away, then paused. "You don't mind, do you? I know it's our anniversary, but—" "Go ahead," I said. "Enjoy yourself." She kissed my cheek quickly and hurried back to the group, where she immediately launched into an animated story about her early days at the firm. The crowd hung on her every word, especially Trent, who watched her with the kind of attention that made my jaw clench. I finished my beer and went inside to clean up the kitchen. It was something to do with my hands while my mind processed what I'd just witnessed. As I loaded the dishwasher and wiped down the counters, I could hear the party continuing outside. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Just ran some quick comps. We might be able to go even higher on the asking price. Market's crazy right now. Talk Monday? I typed back. Sounds good. And Margaret, let's keep this between us for now. Of course, professional discretion. I was putting away the last of the serving platters when Pete Morrison wandered into the kitchen. Pete owned Morrison's garage downtown and had been my friend since high school. He was also one of the few people at this party who'd actually built his own success instead of inheriting it or marrying into it. Hell of a party, he said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Yeah, it's something. Pete studied my face for a moment. You okay, man? You look like someone just pissed in your cornflakes. I almost laughed at that. Pete had a way of cutting through bullshit that I'd always appreciated. Just tired, I guess. Uh-huh. He took a long pull from his beer. That trust fund prick giving you grief? You heard that? Hard to miss. Guy's got a voice like a foghorn and the social awareness of a brick. Pete shook his head. I don't know why Vivian keeps him around. That was a good question. Trent had been showing up to our social gatherings for the past few months, always with some excuse. He was between apartments, his car was in the shop, he needed legal advice. Vivian always seemed happy to help him out, and their mutual friends treated him like he was part of the inner circle. But watching them together tonight, seeing the way she lit up when he paid attention to her, the way she laughed just a little too hard at his jokes, I was starting to suspect there was more to it than just friendship. Pete, I said carefully, you've been around this crowd longer than I have. What's the deal with Trent? How long has he been around? Pete's expression grew uncomfortable. Jack, man, I don't think... Just tell me. He sighed and set down his beer. Look, it's probably nothing. But yeah, he's been around for a while. Shows up at things when you're not there, you know? Business dinners, girls' nights, that kind of thing. How long? 6 months, maybe more. Jack, I really don't think... Thanks, I said, cutting him off. I appreciate the honesty. Pete looked like he wanted to say more, but the sliding door opened and Sienna stumbled in, giggling and clearly drunk. Oh my God, you guys, you're missing the best stories, she announced, swaying slightly. Trent is telling us about his trip to Monaco, and it's hilarious. I bet it is, I said dryly. Sienna blinked at me, her influencer smile faltering slightly. You should come out and join us, Jack. It's your party too, you know. Actually, I think I'm about done for the night. Oh, come on. Don't be such a wet blanket. She grabbed my arm and tried to pull me toward the door. Vivian wants you out there. Does she? I looked through the glass at my wife, who was sitting very close to Trent on the outdoor sofa, her hand resting on his knee as she laughed at something he'd said. She looks pretty occupied. Sienna followed my gaze, and her smile became strained. They're just talking, Jack. God, you're so paranoid sometimes. Paranoid. Right. Just like I was being sensitive earlier. Sienna, I said quietly, how long have you known about this? Known about what? But her voice went up an octave, the way it did when she was lying. About Vivian and Trent. There's nothing to know. They're friends, Jack. Jesus, not everything is some big conspiracy. But she wouldn't meet my eyes, and her hand fluttered nervously to her necklace, a tell I'd noticed years ago during poker games. Pete cleared his throat awkwardly. I think I'm gonna head out, he said. Early day tomorrow. Yeah, me too, I said. Thanks for coming, Pete. After he left, Sienna and I stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Finally, she sighed and looked at me with something that might have been pity. Jack, look. I like you. I really do. But sometimes people grow apart, you know? It doesn't mean anyone's the bad guy. Is that what's happening here? We're growing apart? She shrugged helplessly. I don't know. Maybe? All I know is that Vivian's been different lately. Happier. More like her old self. Her old self? The self from before she married me, presumably. And Trent makes her happy? Sienna's silence was answer enough. I nodded slowly, feeling that same clicking sensation in my brain as earlier. Another tumbler falling into place. Thanks for being honest, I said. Jack, I didn't mean... No, I appreciate it. Really. She looked at me uncertainly for a moment, then shrugged and headed back outside. Through the glass, I watched her whisper something to Vivian, who glanced in my direction with a frown. I was done with this party. Done with these people. Done with being the placeholder husband who was too stupid or too naive to see what was happening right in front of him. But I wasn't done with them. Not by a long shot. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts again. I had calls to make, plans to set in motion. By the time this was over, they'd all learn exactly what happened when you mistook kindness for weakness. The placeholder was about to remind them who really held the power in this relationship. And it was going to be beautiful. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling, which felt appropriate for what I was about to do. I sat in Margaret Chen's office at 8 a.m. sharp, signing papers that would put our penthouse on the market by noon. The coffee was terrible, but I drank it anyway, savoring the bitter taste as I signed away the home where my wife had humiliated me just 36 hours earlier. I have to ask one more time, Margaret said, sliding the final document across her desk. Are you absolutely certain about this? It's a beautiful property, and the market could shift. Margaret, I interrupted, signing my name with a flourish. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. She nodded reluctantly and gathered the papers. Okay then, I'll have the listing live by this afternoon. Professional photos are scheduled for Wednesday, but honestly, with a property like this, we might have showings before then. Perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Running late this morning. Didn't want to wake you. Coffee date with Sienna before work. See you tonight. Coffee date, right. More likely a debriefing session about Saturday night's performance. I drove from Margaret's office straight to First National Bank, where I'd been a customer for 15 years. Sandra Williams, the branch manager, greeted me personally, one of the perks of keeping substantial business accounts there. Jack, good to see you. What can we do for you today? I need to make some changes to my accounts, Sandra. Specifically, I want to close all joint accounts and transfer the funds to individual accounts in my name only. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh. Well, we can certainly help with that, but you'll need both account holders present for joint accounts or written authorization from... Check the signature cards, I said calmly. I think you'll find I have sole authority on most of these accounts. She pulled up my information on her computer, and I watched her eyebrows rise. Oh my. Yes, you're right. It looks like you're the primary account holder on everything except the household checking account. That was correct. When Vivian and I had gotten married, I'd been the one with established credit and banking relationships. She'd been added to my accounts, not the other way around. It had seemed romantic at the time, combining our lives, sharing everything. Now it just seemed practical. How much are we talking about here? Sandra asked carefully. The investment accounts, savings, business accounts, probably around 2.3 million, give or take. She blinked. I see. And you want to transfer all of this to individual accounts? That's correct. I also want to remove Vivian Avery's access to all accounts, credit cards, and automatic payments. Everything. Sandra's professionalism was admirable, but I could see the curiosity burning in her eyes. In a city this size, news traveled fast, especially when it involved this much money. We can have this processed by end of business today, she said. I'll need about an hour to set up the new accounts and process the transfers. Excellent. Oh, and Sandra, I'd appreciate your discretion on this matter. Of course, Jack. Banking privacy is something we take very seriously. I spent the next hour at Morrison's garage, drinking better coffee and catching up with Pete while his mechanics worked on my truck. Pete's place was a throwback to an earlier era. Honest work, fair prices, and no bullshit. It felt good to be around something real after Saturday night's performance. You look better, Pete observed, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Less like someone stole your lunch money. Just getting some things in order. Uh-huh. He studied me with the shrewd eyes that had made him successful, despite never finishing college. You want to talk about it? I considered that. Pete was probably the closest thing I had to a real friend in this city, and he'd been straight with me Saturday night when others might have stayed silent. Pete, can I ask you something? Man to man? Shoot. If your wife was having an affair, would you want to know? He set down his coffee cup and looked at me seriously. That's a hell of a question, Jack. It's a hell of a situation. Pete was quiet for a long moment, watching his mechanics work. Finally, he sighed and turned back to me. Yeah, I'd want to know, but more importantly, I'd want to know what I was going to do about it. What would you do? Depends. If I still loved her and thought we could work it out, I'd fight for her. If I thought she was just using me, he shrugged. I'd make sure she couldn't do it to the next guy. I nodded slowly. That was Pete, direct, practical, and utterly without illusion. Why? He asked. You think Vivian's stepping out? I think Vivian's been stepping out for months, and Saturday night was her way of letting me know she's ready to trade up. Pete whistled low. The trust fund kid? The trust fund kid. Well, shit. He shook his head. I'm sorry, man, that's rough. It is what it is. So what are you going to do about it? I smiled for the first time in days. I'm going to remind everyone why you don't underestimate the guy who built everything you're standing on. Pete grinned back. Now that sounds more like the Jack Avery I know. You need any help with that reminder? I might. You still have connections at the impound lot? Sure do. Why? Just thinking ahead. I'll let you know. By the time I got back to the bank, Sandra had everything ready. New accounts, new cards, new access codes. The joint accounts had been closed and the funds transferred. Vivian's access to everything had been terminated. The credit card companies will need 24 hours to process the changes, Sandra explained. After that, any cards in her name will be declined. Perfect. What about automatic payments? All canceled. Mortgage, car payments, insurance, utilities, gym memberships, everything that was set up for automatic withdrawal. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Excellent work, Sandra. I appreciate your efficiency. Of course. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Just one more thing. I want to set up a new business account, completely separate from everything else. Can we do that now? Absolutely. 20 minutes later, I walked out of First National with complete financial independence and a plan that was starting to take shape. Vivian had no idea that her comfortable life had just evaporated. The credit cards she'd use for lunch today would work fine. The ones she'd try to use tomorrow would be a different story. My phone rang as I was getting into my truck. Margaret Chen, sounding excited. Jack, you're not going to believe this. I just got off the phone with a buyer's agent. They want to schedule a showing for this afternoon. Already? I told you the market was hot. This is a cash buyer, no financing contingencies. They saw the listing photos and want to see it immediately. How much are they thinking? They didn't say, but they're asking about a quick closing. This could be exactly what we're looking for. I thought about Vivian, probably sitting in some trendy cafe with Sienna right now, rehashing Saturday night's triumph, planning her next move maybe, figuring out how to manage her placeholder husband while she explored her options with Trent. Schedule the showing, I said. I'll make sure the place is ready. What about Vivian? Shouldn't she be there? Vivian's very busy with work, I said smoothly. I can handle it. After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a moment, watching the city bustle around me. Normal people going about their normal lives, unaware that just a few blocks away, a woman was about to discover that actions have consequences. I drove home, though I supposed I should stop thinking of it as home, and spent the afternoon making sure the penthouse looked perfect for potential buyers. I cleaned, organized, and staged everything to show off the property's best features: the custom kitchen, the panoramic views, the high-end finishes that I'd personally selected and installed. While I worked, I thought about Saturday night, about the laughter, the casual cruelty, the way Vivian had looked at Trent like he was the most fascinating man in the world, about Sienna's pitying smile and Greg's knowing nods. They thought they were so clever, so sophisticated, playing their little games while the dumb contractor husband stayed in his lane and kept the money flowing. Well, the money had just stopped flowing, and the games were about to get a lot more interesting. At 3 p.m., Margaret arrived with the potential buyers, a young couple from New York looking to relocate for work. They were polite, professional, and clearly impressed with the property. "The kitchen is incredible," the wife said, running her hands over the granite countertops. "Did you do the renovation yourselves?" "I designed and supervised all of it," I said. "Custom cabinets, professional-grade appliances, everything built to last." "It shows. The attention to detail is remarkable." They spent an hour going through every room, asking technical questions about the building, the HOA fees, the neighborhood. I answered everything honestly, professionally, like the successful businessman I actually was, rather than the placeholder husband they'd heard about at parties. After they left, Margaret looked at me with barely contained excitement. "Jack, I think they're going to make an offer. A serious offer." "How serious?" "Full asking price, maybe more. They love it and they want to move fast." My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Order takeout for dinner." Working late. Sure she was. "Margaret," I said, "if they make a good offer, I want to accept it immediately. How fast can we close? With a cash buyer? 2 weeks, maybe less?" "Perfect." After Margaret left, I stood on the terrace where my marriage had effectively ended just 2 nights earlier. The harbor was busy with evening traffic, pleasure boats heading home, commercial vessels going about their business. Life moving forward, as it always does. My phone rang. Vivian. "Hey, honey," she said, sounding slightly breathless. "Just calling to check in. How was your day?" "Productive," I said. "Very productive. How's work?" "Oh, you know, the usual chaos. I'm probably going to be here for another few hours at least." In the background, I could hear music and conversation. Either her law firm had gotten a lot more social, or she was lying about where she was. "Well, don't work too hard," I said. "You'll need your energy." "For what?" "For what's coming next." There was a pause. "Jack, you're being weird again. Are you still upset about Saturday?" "Not upset," I said. "Just enlightened." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm starting to see things clearly for the first time in a long time." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay. Well, I really do have to get back to work. We'll talk when I get home, okay?" "Sure thing. Say hi to Trent for me." The silence that followed was deafening. "What?" she said finally. "Nothing. Just, if you see him around, tell him I said hi." "Jack, I don't know what you're implying, but I'm not implying anything, Vivian. I'm just being friendly." "Right. Well, I'll see you later." She hung up without saying goodbye. I smiled and went inside to pack a suitcase. I had a feeling I'd be staying somewhere else for a while, at least until the penthouse sold. There was the extended stay hotel downtown that catered to business travelers, clean, anonymous, and perfectly adequate for my needs. As I packed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Trent. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "I don't think we do." "Yes, we do. Meet me at Murphy's Bar in an hour." Murphy's was a dive bar downtown, the kind of place where trust fund babies went when they wanted to feel edgy. It was also public enough that Trent couldn't do anything stupid, and neutral territory where neither of us had an advantage. "Fine," I typed back. 1 hour. I finished packing and loaded my suitcase into the truck. Before I left, I took one last look around the penthouse, at the life I'd built, the home I'd created, the dreams I'd invested in this place. Tomorrow, it would probably have a sold sign on it, and Vivian would finally understand what it meant to lose something you'd taken for granted. But first, I had a conversation to have with the man who thought he was taking my place. This was going to be interesting. Murphy's Bar hadn't changed in the 15 years I'd been occasionally drinking there. Same scarred wooden tables, same neon beer signs, same smell of cigarettes and desperation that seemed to permeate the walls. It was the kind of place where construction workers grabbed beers after long days, where off-duty cops nursed whiskeys and complained about their jobs, where real people dealt with real problems. It was not the kind of place where Trent Delacroix usually spent his evenings. I spotted him immediately. He was the only guy in the place wearing a blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He sat in a corner booth, looking deeply uncomfortable as he nursed what appeared to be a craft beer. Several of the regulars were eyeing him with the kind of curiosity usually reserved for zoo animals. I ordered a Budweiser from Mickey, the ancient bartender who'd been serving drinks here since the Carter administration, and walked over to Trent's table. "This is an interesting choice of venue," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. Trent looked up, and I was surprised to see that he appeared genuinely nervous. His usual smug confidence was nowhere to be found, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "I wanted somewhere private," he said. "This is about as public as it gets. Private from our usual crowd." Our usual crowd. Interesting way to put it. "So," I said, taking a sip of my beer, "what's so important that you needed to drag me down here?" Trent fidgeted with his bottle, peeling at the label with manicured fingernails. "Look, Jack, I think there might be some misunderstandings about Saturday night." "Misunderstandings?" "Yeah, I mean, I was just joking around, you know? Having some fun. I didn't mean anything serious by it." I studied his face. He was lying, of course, but there was something else there. Something that looked like genuine worry. "What exactly are you worried about, Trent?" "I'm not worried about anything. I don't want there to be any hard feelings between us." "Hard feelings?" "Yeah. I mean, we're all friends here, right? We all run in the same circles, go to the same parties. It would be awkward if there was tension." I leaned back in the booth, genuinely curious now. "Trent, let me ask you something. How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" The beer bottle slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the table, foam spilling across the scarred wood. His face went white, then red, then white again. What? I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You've been sniffing around Vivian for months, showing up at events when I'm not there, playing the charming friend who just needs a little help. And she's been eating it up." "Jack, you're way off base here." "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, Saturday night looked like a victory lap. Like you were marking your territory in front of the whole pack." Trent's hands were shaking now. He grabbed some napkins and started mopping up the spilled beer, avoiding my eyes. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" He was quiet for a long moment, still focused on cleaning up the mess. When he finally looked up, there was something desperate in his expression. She's incredible, Jack. She's smart and beautiful and successful, and she gets me, you know? She understands what it's like to want more than what you have. What she has is a husband. A husband who doesn't appreciate her." The words burst out of him like he'd been holding them back for months. You treat her like she's just another piece of furniture in that fancy apartment. You don't see how brilliant she is, how ambitious. You just want her to be the little wife who smiles and looks pretty at your business dinners. I stared at him, genuinely amazed. Is that what she told you? She didn't have to tell me anything. I can see it for myself. The way you ignore her when she talks about work, the way you dismiss her friends, the way you act like your construction business is so much more important than her legal career. My construction business that paid for the apartment where you've been screwing my wife? It's not about the money. It's always about the money, Trent, especially for people who've never had to earn it. His face flushed angry red. You don't know anything about me. I know you're a trust fund baby who's never worked a real day in his life. I know you drive a BMW that Daddy bought you and live in an apartment that Daddy pays for. And I know you think you can waltz into my life and take whatever you want because you've never faced any real consequences for anything. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, Trent, what exactly do you do for a living? He mumbled something I couldn't hear. What was that? I'm a consultant, he said louder. What kind of consultant? Business development, strategic planning. For who? Silence. Come on, Trent. Who are your clients? What companies have you helped develop their business? What strategies have you planned? More silence. That's what I thought. You're a professional rich kid whose biggest accomplishment is spending other people's money. And now you think you're going to take my wife because… What? Because you're better than me? Because I love her. The words exploded out of him, loud enough to make several people at the bar turn around. Because I can give her the life she deserves. With what money? I have money. Your daddy's money. What happens when Daddy gets tired of funding your lifestyle? What happens when the trust fund runs out? Trent's face went pale again. That won't happen. Won't it? Because from what I hear, your family's getting a little tired of your act. Word around town is that Daddy's thinking about cutting you off, making you earn your own way for once. That was a complete lie, but Trent's reaction told me I'd hit close to something. His hands clenched into fists on the table. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? See, Trent, this is a small city. People talk. And what they're saying is that the Delacroix family is getting embarrassed by their useless son, who can't hold a job and spends his time chasing other men's wives. Shut up. They're saying maybe it's time for little Trent to grow up and face the real world. Maybe it's time to cut off the allowance and see if he can actually make something of himself. Shut up! He was on his feet now, fists clenched, face red with rage. The entire bar had gone quiet, watching this well-dressed pretty boy lose his mind at a construction worker who was sitting calmly in his seat. Sit down, Trent, I said quietly. You're making a scene. I don't care. You can't talk to me like that. I can talk to you however I want. This is America, son. Freedom of speech. Mickey the bartender had come out from behind the bar and was walking toward us, a baseball bat in his hands. Several of the regulars were standing up, ready to intervene if this escalated. Is there a problem here, Jack? Mickey asked, his eyes never leaving Trent. No problem, Mickey. My friend here was just leaving. Trent looked around the bar, suddenly realizing where he was and how badly outnumbered he was. These weren't his usual crowd of trust fund babies and social climbers. These were working men who had no patience for rich kids throwing tantrums. This isn't over, he said, trying to salvage some dignity. Yes, it is, I replied calmly. It's very much over. He threw a 20 on the table and stormed out, his expensive shoes clicking on the worn linoleum. Through the window, I watched him get into his BMW and speed away, probably heading back to whatever safe space rich kids retreated to when the real world bit them. Friend of yours? Mickey asked, still holding the bat. Not exactly. Good. I don't like his type. They come in here thinking they own the place, talking down to people who could break them in half. He won't be back. Better not be. Next round's on the house. I spent another hour at Murphy's, nursing my free beer and thinking about the conversation. Trent was scared, which was interesting. He was also deeply delusional about Vivian and their relationship, which was useful. Scared and delusional people made mistakes. My phone buzzed with several texts. Vivian, where are you? Your truck isn't here. Vivian, Jack, I'm getting worried. Call me. Vivian, seriously, where are you? This isn't like you. I typed back, having a drink with a friend, don't wait up. She responded immediately, what friend, where? Just a friend. I'll see you tomorrow. I turned off my phone and ordered one more beer. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. The penthouse would probably sell, Vivian's credit cards would start getting declined, and word would begin to spread through their precious social circle that something was happening in the Avery marriage. But tonight, I was just going to sit in this honest bar with honest people and enjoy the calm before the storm. Because the storm was coming. And when it hit, everyone who'd laughed at me on Saturday night was going to learn exactly what happened when you underestimated the placeholder. I woke up Tuesday morning in my extended stay hotel room to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Apparently, Vivian had discovered that her credit cards weren't working. The messages started calm and progressed to increasingly frantic. 6:23 a.m. Jack, there's something wrong with my Amex. Can you call the bank? 6:47 a.m. None of my cards are working. What's going on? 7:15 a.m. Jack, call me now. 7:33 a.m. I'm at the bank. They say you closed our accounts? What the hell is happening? 8:02 a.m. Where are you? The final message, sent just 10 minutes ago, was simply, I'm coming to your office. I smiled and ordered room service breakfast. This was going to be a good day. My phone rang as I was finishing my coffee. Margaret Chen, and she sounded excited. Jack, we got the offer. Full asking price, cash, 30-day closing. Excellent, accept it. Don't you want to think about it? Maybe counter for more? No, accept it exactly as offered. Okay, but Jack, I have to tell you, the buyer's agent asked about your wife. They want to make sure both owners are on board with the sale. Both owners? Well, yes. Isn't Vivian on the deed? I thought about that. We'd bought the penthouse 5 years ago, and I'd handled all the paperwork. Margaret, can you check the deed for me? I want to make sure we have everything in order. Of course, I'll pull it up right now. I heard typing in the background. Okay, here it is. The deed shows... Oh, it shows only your name, Jack. Vivian isn't listed as an owner. Perfect. Another tumbler clicking into place. That's correct. I purchased the property before we were married, and we never updated the deed. Oh, well then, there's no problem at all. I'll get the acceptance sent over this morning. After I hung up, I called my office to let them know I'd be working from home for a few days. My assistant, Carol, had been with me for 8 years and was used to my occasional absences. Everything okay, Jack? You sound different. Everything's fine, Carol. Just dealing with some personal matters. Can you handle things for the rest of the week? Of course. But Jack, your wife called here looking for you about an hour ago. She sounded pretty upset. I'm sure she did. If she calls again, just tell her I'm unavailable. Okay, but, Carol, it's important. I'm unavailable to Vivian, no matter what she says or how urgent it sounds. There was a pause. Carol was smart enough to read between the lines. Understood, Jack. I'll handle it. I spent the morning making more calls, setting more pieces in motion. By noon, I'd accomplished quite a bit. Canceled Vivian's gym membership, spa package, and country club access. Removed her from my health insurance policy. Changed the locks on my office and workshop. Transferred ownership of her BMW back to the dealership. It was still technically a lease in my name. Contacted a divorce attorney. The last call was to Pete Morrison. Jack, how'd it go with the trust fund kid last night? Exactly as expected. Pete, I need a favor. Name it. Can you have Vivian's car picked up this afternoon? The lease is in my name and I'm terminating it. Pete chuckled. Oh, this is getting good. Where's the car? Probably at her office, Morrison, Klein, and Associates downtown. I know the place. Fancy building, lots of lawyers. This is gonna be fun. Pete, make sure it's done professionally. No drama, no scenes, just business. You got it. What should I tell her if she asks? Tell her to call her husband. At 2 p.m. my phone rang. Vivian, and she was furious. Jack, what the hell is going on? They just towed my car. It wasn't your car, Vivian. It was a lease in my name. Don't play games with me. I've been trying to reach you all day. My cards don't work, I can't access our accounts, and now my car is gone? Those weren't our accounts. They were my accounts that you had access to. Jack, you're scaring me. What's happening? Are we being audited? Is there some kind of financial emergency? I almost laughed at that. Even now, she couldn't conceive that this might be about her behavior. It had to be some external crisis, some mistake, some misunderstanding that would be cleared up once she talked to the right person. No audit, Vivian. No emergency. Just some overdue housekeeping. What does that mean? It means I'm tired of being taken for granted. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different. More careful, more calculating. Jack, where are you? Let's talk about this face to face. I don't think that's necessary. Yes, it is. Whatever's bothering you, we can work it out. We always do. Do we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already worked things out with someone else. Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. How's Trent, by the way? I had an interesting conversation with him last night. The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Jack, she said finally, I think you're having some kind of breakdown. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. No, you're not. You're being paranoid and destructive. Look what you've done today. You've frozen our accounts, taken my car, cut off my credit cards. This is insane behavior. It's practical behavior. I'm protecting my assets. Your assets? Jack, we're married. These are our assets. Are we married, Vivian? Because Saturday night, it seemed like you were auditioning for a replacement. That's ridiculous. Trent is a friend. That's all. A friend who calls you his real thing while dismissing me as a placeholder? He was drunk and being stupid. It didn't mean anything. Didn't it? Then why did you laugh? Why did you toast along with him? Why did our friends think it was so goddamn hilarious? Because it was just a joke, Jack. A stupid, meaningless joke. No, Vivian. It was a message. And I received it loud and clear. Jack, please, come home and let's talk about this like adults. I am talking about it like an adult. I'm talking about it like a man who's finally figured out what's been going on behind his back. Nothing's been going on. Really? Then you won't mind if I hire a private investigator to confirm that? The sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. You wouldn't. Try me. Jack, listen to me. I love you. I married you. Whatever you think is happening, you're wrong. Am I? Then prove it. Cut contact with Trent. Stop seeing him. Stop talking to him. Stop letting him hang around our friends. That's not fair. I can't just cut off a friend because you're being jealous. Then we don't have anything else to discuss. Jack, wait. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside my hotel window, the city was going about its business, unaware that a marriage was disintegrating in real time just a few floors above the street. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Sienna Morrison, looking uncharacteristically serious. I know you're in there, Jack, she called. Vivian told me what hotel you're staying at. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Sienna, what can I do for you? You can stop being an asshole and go home to your wife. Is that your professional opinion? It's my opinion as someone who cares about both of you. Jack, Vivian is a mess. She's been crying all day. She can't understand what's happening, and she's scared. She should be scared. Sienna's eyes flashed. What is wrong with you? This isn't like you at all. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do. I know you well enough to know that you're better than this. You're acting like a vindictive child. I'm acting like a man who's tired of being made a fool of. Nobody's making a fool of you. Really? Then what was Saturday night? Sienna's expression shifted slightly, and I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. That was just Trent being Trent. You know how he is. I'm starting to. What I don't understand is why everyone thinks it's acceptable. Because it's not serious. He's a flirt, Jack. It's harmless. Harmless flirting doesn't usually involve calling someone's husband a placeholder. He was drunk. So were you. So was Vivian. So was everyone else. But somehow I'm the only one who thought it was inappropriate. Sienna looked uncomfortable. Jack, look, maybe it went too far. Maybe Trent was out of line. But that doesn't justify what you're doing now. What am I doing now? You're destroying your marriage over a stupid comment. I'm responding appropriately to a pattern of disrespect that's been building for months. What pattern? What are you talking about? I studied her face. She was genuinely confused, which meant either she was a better actress than I'd given her credit for, or Vivian had been more discreet than I'd thought. Sienna, how often do you and Vivian see Trent when I'm not around? I don't know. Sometimes. Why? How often is sometimes? Jack, I don't keep track of... How often? She sighed. Maybe once or twice a week. He comes to lunch sometimes or drinks after work. He's part of our friend group. Since when? Since... I don't know. A few months ago? And in those few months, have you noticed anything unusual about their friendship? Sienna's discomfort was growing more obvious. What do you mean? I mean, do they seem closer than just friends? Jack, I'm not going to spy on your wife for you. You're not spying. You're observing, and what you've observed is making you uncomfortable, or you wouldn't be here right now trying to do damage control. She was quiet for a long moment, fidgeting with her purse strap. Look, she said finally, maybe they're close. Maybe closer than they should be, but that doesn't mean anything's actually happening. Doesn't it? No. People can be attracted to each other without acting on it. People can have emotional connections without crossing lines. And you think that's what's happening here? I think Vivian loves you and would never actually cheat on you. But she might do everything except actually cheat? Sienna's silence was answer enough. Thank you, I said. That's all I needed to know. Jack, wait. Don't do this. Don't throw away 8 years of marriage because of some flirtation that doesn't mean anything. It means something to me. Then fight for her. Win her back. Don't just give up. I looked at Sienna. Really looked at her. She was genuinely distressed, genuinely worried about her friend. But she was also naive in the way that people who'd never been truly betrayed often were. Sienna, let me ask you something. If your husband was having an emotional affair, if he was letting another woman make him feel special and important while treating you like furniture, would you fight for him? That's not the same thing, isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what's been happening. Vivian's been getting her emotional needs met by Trent while expecting me to keep paying the bills and playing the role of the stable, boring husband. That's not... She doesn't think you're boring. Doesn't she? When's the last time she asked about my work? When's the last time she seemed interested in anything I had to say? When's the last time she looked at me the way she looks at him? Sienna opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Yeah, I said. That's what I thought. Jack, please, just talk to her. Give her a chance to explain. I did talk to her, this afternoon. And you know what she said? She said I was having a breakdown. She said I was being paranoid and destructive. She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge that maybe her behavior had been inappropriate, and she didn't offer to change anything. She just told me I was crazy. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she didn't know what to say. Maybe. Or maybe she's exactly who I think she is. Sienna looked at me for a long moment, then shook her head sadly. I don't know what happened to you, Jack, but this isn't you. You're right, I said. The old me would have ignored it, made excuses, and kept playing the role of the oblivious husband. The new me has higher standards. After she left, I sat in my hotel room and thought about what she'd said. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should give Vivian another chance to explain, to apologize, to make things right. Then I remembered the sound of laughter on Saturday night. I remembered the way Vivian had looked at Trent, the way she'd dismissed my feelings this afternoon, the way she'd automatically assumed that I was the problem. No, I was done being the understanding husband. I was done making excuses for behavior that would have been unacceptable from anyone else in my life. It was time to finish what I'd started. I turned my phone back on and started making more calls. By tomorrow, everyone in their social circle would know that the Avery marriage was over. And by the end of the week, they'd all understand exactly what happened when you mistook kindness for weakness. The placeholder was done being replaced. It was time to show them what a real man looked like when he stopped playing games. Wednesday morning brought news that made everything worthwhile. The penthouse sale had been finalized, and closing was set for the following Tuesday. I'd walk away with $3.2 million after paying off the remaining mortgage and fees. Not bad for a placeholder. I was having breakfast in the hotel restaurant when Pete Morrison called. Jack, you need to get down to Murphy's bar. Now. What's wrong? Your boy Trent is here drunk off his ass and he's running his mouth about you and Vivian. Mickey's about ready to throw him out, but I thought you might want to handle this yourself. I checked my watch. 10:30 a.m. He's drunk at 10:30 in the morning? Plastered, and getting worse. He's telling anyone who'll listen about how he's gonna take your wife and your life and how you're just some blue-collar loser who doesn't deserve either one. I'll be right there. Murphy's bar looked different in the morning light streaming through the dirty windows. The usual evening crowd of workers and cops had been replaced by a handful of day drinkers and one very drunk trust fund baby holding court at the bar. Trent was indeed plastered, swaying on his stool as he gestured wildly with a whiskey glass. His expensive clothes were wrinkled and stained, his hair was disheveled, and he looked like he'd been drinking for hours. And the thing is, he was saying to Mickey, who looked like he was contemplating homicide, the thing is, she deserves so much better than that. That construction worker. She's a lawyer. She's sophisticated. She's married, Mickey interrupted. And you're cut off. No, you don't understand, Trent slurred, waving his glass. She's not really married. Not in her heart. She told me so. She said what? Everyone in the bar turned to look at me. Trent's face went white, then red, then white again. Jack, my man, come have a drink with me. It's 10:30 in the morning, Trent. So? It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? He laughed at his own joke, a high, nervous sound. Come on, let's talk, man to man. We talked Monday night, remember? That was different. That was before. Before what? Trent took a long pull from his whiskey and set the glass down with exaggerated care. Before I realized what kind of man you really are. And what kind of man is that? The kind who abandons his wife when she needs him most. The bar went completely silent. Even the jukebox seemed to pause between songs. Excuse me? You heard me. Vivian came to me yesterday crying, scared, not understanding why her husband had suddenly turned into a monster. And you know what I did? I comforted her, like a real man would. You comforted her. That's right. I held her while she cried about how cruel you were being, how you destroyed her life for no reason, how the man she married had turned into someone she didn't recognize. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Where did this comforting take place? My apartment. She didn't have anywhere else to go thanks to you. And how exactly did you comfort her? Trent's smile was ugly and triumphant. However she needed me to. The silence in the bar was deafening. I could feel Pete tensing beside me, ready to intervene if this got physical. Mickey had quietly reached for his baseball bat. "You're saying you slept with my wife?" "I'm saying I was there for her when her husband wasn't. I gave her what she needed: understanding, compassion, affection. Everything you should have been giving her but were too much of a bastard to provide." While she was upset and vulnerable, while she was realizing what kind of man she really wanted to be with. I studied his face. He was drunk, angry, and completely convinced of his own righteousness. He actually believed he was the hero of this story. "Trent, let me ask you something. When Vivian came to you yesterday crying and scared, what was the first thing you did?" "I listened to her. And then? I comforted her. By sleeping with her. By showing her what real love looks like." "Right. So when a married woman came to you in distress, your immediate response was to have intimacy with her." "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" It was beautiful. It was two people finding each other, connecting on a level that transcends. It was you taking advantage of someone who was emotionally compromised." "No. She wanted it. She wanted me." "Did she? Or did she want comfort? And you decided that comfort should include getting laid?" Trent's face was getting redder. "You don't understand. You've never understood her. She's been starving for affection, for someone who appreciates her, and you've been too selfish to see it. So you decided to feed that starvation." "Yes, while she was married to someone else. A marriage that was already over. A marriage to someone who doesn't deserve her." "And you do?" "Yes. I love her." "You love her so much that you're sitting in a dive bar at 10:30 in the morning, drunk, telling strangers about your intimate conquest." That stopped him cold. He looked around the bar, suddenly seeming to realize where he was and what he'd been saying. "That's not... I wasn't..." "You weren't what? Bragging about sleeping with another man's wife? Because that's exactly what you were doing." "I was explaining. You were gloating. You were celebrating. You were treating the woman you claimed to love like a trophy you'd won." "No." "Yes. And you know what that tells me about your love, Trent? It tells me it's not love at all. It's conquest. It's ego. It's you proving to yourself that you can take whatever you want." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Because if you really loved her, you wouldn't be here right now. You'd be with her, helping her through this difficult time. Instead, you're getting drunk and bragging to strangers." Trent stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Around us, the bar patrons were watching with the fascination of people witnessing a car crash. "You want to know the funny thing, Trent?" I continued. "I'm not even angry about the intimacy. I'm angry about the disrespect. You could have at least waited until she was divorced before you started playing hero. She needed someone. She needed a friend, someone to listen, to offer advice, to help her figure out what she really wanted. Instead, she got someone who saw an opportunity and took it. I didn't take anything. She gave you what she thought you wanted in exchange for the comfort she needed, and you were happy to make that trade." Trent was crying now, tears streaming down his face as the full weight of what he'd done and what he'd revealed began to sink in. "I love her," he whispered. "No, you don't. You love the idea of her. You love the fantasy of taking something away from someone you think is beneath you. But you don't love her, because if you did, you'd understand that what you've done has made everything worse for her." "How?" "Because now, instead of being the wronged wife who deserves sympathy and support, she's the cheating wife who ran to another man the first time her marriage hit a rough patch. Instead of having the moral high ground, she's given it away for a few hours of comfort from a drunk trust fund baby." The words hit him like physical blows. He slumped on his stool, suddenly looking much older and much more sober. "I didn't mean for it to happen like that. But it did happen like that. And now you both have to live with the consequences." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Vivian's number. "Here's what's going to happen, Trent. You're going to go home, sober up, and stay away from my wife. You're going to stay away from our friends, our social circle, and anywhere else you might run into us. And if you ever speak about what happened yesterday to anyone else, I will make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of man you really are. You can't. I can. And I will. Because unlike you, I don't make threats I can't keep." I turned to leave, then paused and looked back at him. "Oh, and Trent? You might want to call your family. Something tells me you're going to need their help very soon." I walked out of Murphy's bar into the bright morning sunshine, leaving behind a broken man and a dozen witnesses to his confession. My phone was already buzzing with texts. Word would spread through the city's gossip network within hours. By evening, everyone would know that Vivian Avery had run straight to another man's bed the moment her marriage hit turbulence. They'd know that Trent Delacroix was a predator who took advantage of vulnerable women. And they'd know that Jack Avery, the placeholder husband, had handled the whole situation with more class and dignity than either of the people who'd betrayed him. It was, I reflected, a very good day. Now I just had to wait for Vivian to realize that her comfortable life had completely imploded. That part was going to be interesting. My phone rang. Margaret Chen. "Jack, I have the closing documents ready for your signature. Can you come in this afternoon?" "Absolutely. What time?" "How about 2 p.m.? "Perfect. And Margaret, after we're done with the paperwork, I'd like to discuss purchasing something new. Maybe a house outside the city, something with some land, some privacy." "Of course. I'd be happy to help you find something. A house outside the city. A place where I could start over, build something new, create a life that belonged entirely to me." It sounded perfect. The placeholder was about to become the only player that mattered. The closing on the penthouse went smoothly. I walked out of the lawyer's office with a check for $3.2 million and the satisfaction of knowing that Vivian would come home to an empty apartment and a foreclosure notice. The new owners were taking possession immediately, and building security had been instructed to change all the locks. I was having a celebratory drink at Murphy's bar. It had become my regular spot over the past few days, when my phone rang. Vivian, and she sounded hysterical. "Jack, what did you do? The locks are changed, there are strangers in our apartment, and security says I don't live here anymore." "You don't live there anymore. I sold the penthouse." "You sold it? You can't sell it. It's our home." "It was my home. My name was on the deed. My money paid for it, and I sold it to people who'll actually appreciate it." "But where am I supposed to live?" "I don't know, Vivian. Maybe your friend Trent can help you figure that out." There was a long pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I had an interesting conversation with him this morning. He was very forthcoming about how he comforted you yesterday." The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "Jack," she said finally, her voice very small, "it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. And apparently, it's exactly what Trent thinks too, since he was bragging about it to everyone at Murphy's bar." "He was bragging?" "Oh, yes. Told everyone how he'd rescued you from your cruel husband and showed you what real love looks like. Very touching story." I could hear her crying now, soft sobs that might have moved me a week ago. Now they just sounded like the consequences of poor choices catching up with someone who'd never had to face them before. "Jack, please, I made a mistake. I was scared and confused and You ran to another man's bed, on the same day your marriage hit its first real crisis." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that. And now everyone knows it." "Everyone?" "Murphy's bar isn't exactly known for its discretion, Vivian. By tonight, half the city will know that you cheated on your husband with Trent Delacroix. By tomorrow, the other half will know too." The sobbing got louder. "You're destroying my life." "No, I'm just not protecting you from the consequences of your choices anymore." There's a difference. Jack, please, I love you. I made a mistake, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can't do anything, Vivian. There is no we anymore. Don't say that. I'm saying it because it's true. You made your choice when you decided I was just a placeholder. You confirmed it when you ran to Trent the moment things got difficult. And you sealed it when you let him use your vulnerability as an excuse to sleep with you. I didn't let him use me. Didn't you? Because from where I'm sitting, that's exactly what happened. You were scared and upset. He offered comfort. And somehow that comfort included intimacy. Either you're incredibly naive, or you wanted it to happen. I don't know what I wanted. Well, now you don't have to figure it out. You can have Trent, and he can have you, and you can both live with what you've done. I don't want Trent. I want you. You should have thought about that before you slept with him. The word hung in the air like a slap. Vivian gasped, and I realized it might have been the first time in our 8-year marriage that I'd used that word in anger. Jack, you're being cruel. I'm being honest. Something I should have been doing a long time ago. What do you mean? I mean, I should have told you years ago that you were turning into someone I didn't recognize. Someone selfish, entitled, and completely oblivious to anyone else's needs. I should have told you that your friends were shallow social climbers who only cared about money and status. And I should have told you that if you ever disrespected me the way you did Saturday night, there would be consequences. I didn't disrespect you. You laughed while another man called me a placeholder. You toasted to the idea that I was just keeping your seat warm until someone better came along. And when I confronted you about it, you told me I was being paranoid and having a breakdown. Because you were acting crazy. I was acting like a man who'd finally had enough. Enough of what? Enough of being taken for granted. Enough of being treated like hired help in my own marriage. Enough of watching you light up for other men while treating me like furniture. I never treated you like furniture. When's the last time you asked about my work, Vivian? When's the last time you seemed interested in my thoughts, my dreams, my goals? When's the last time you looked at me the way you look at Trent? Silence. That's what I thought. You checked out of this marriage months ago, Vivian. You just didn't have the courage to leave until you had someone else lined up. That's not true, isn't it? Then why did you run straight to him the moment we had problems? Why didn't you fight for us? Why didn't you try to work things out? I was scared. You were looking for an exit strategy, and Trent provided one. No. Yes. And now you have what you wanted. Freedom from the placeholder husband, a chance to be with the man who really appreciates you, and all the drama and excitement that comes with blowing up your life for someone you barely know. I don't want that. Then you should have thought about that before you made your choices. I could hear voices in the background, Sienna maybe, or one of her other friends. The support network rallying around the poor, betrayed wife who'd been driven to infidelity by her cruel husband. Jack, where are you staying? We need to talk face to face. No, we don't. Yes, we do. You can't just throw away 8 years of marriage over a phone call. I'm not throwing it away, you already did that. I made one mistake. You made a series of choices, Vivian. Each one took you further away from our marriage and closer to where you are now. Saturday night wasn't a mistake, it was a declaration. Yesterday wasn't a mistake, it was a confirmation. You're wrong. Am I? Then answer me this. If I came to you right now and said I forgave everything, that we could start over, that I'd take you back with no questions asked, would you be relieved, or would you be disappointed that you couldn't explore things with Trent? The pause told me everything I needed to know. I don't know. Yes, you do, and so do I. Jack, please. Goodbye, Vivian. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. I hung up and turned off my phone. Around me, Murphy's bar continued its afternoon routine. Workers stopping in for quick beers, retirees nursing whiskeys and telling stories, the comfortable rhythm of people who knew who they were and what they wanted. Pete Morrison slid onto the stool next to me. Rough conversation? Final conversation. How do you feel? I thought about that. How did I feel? Angry, certainly. Betrayed, obviously. But underneath those emotions was something I hadn't expected. Relief. Free, I said finally. I feel free. Pete nodded. That's good. That's healthy. Is it? Hell yes. You know what's not healthy? Staying married to someone who doesn't respect you, doesn't appreciate you, and thinks you're just a placeholder in her real life. When you put it like that, that's the only way to put it, Jack. You deserve better than what she was giving you. My phone buzzed with a text. Margaret Chen. Found 3 properties that might interest you. All outside the city, all with privacy and land. Want to look at them tomorrow? I typed back, yes. Set up the appointments. New house? Pete asked. New everything. New house, new life, new start. Good for you. What about the business? The business is fine. Better than fine, actually. Turns out I don't need a fancy penthouse and a social climbing wife to be successful. Pete laughed. Funny how that works. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. Jack? This is Greg Hartwell from Vivian's firm. Greg, the colleague who'd thought Trent's placeholder comment was hilarious. What can I do for you, Greg? I think we need to talk. About Vivian, about what's happening, about everything. I don't think we do. Jack, listen, I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but what? But you're destroying her reputation, her career, her whole life. Is that really what you want? I thought about that. Was it what I wanted? Did I want to destroy Vivian's life? Greg, let me ask you something. Saturday night, when Trent called me a placeholder, did you think that was appropriate? Well, he was drunk, and did you think it was appropriate? No, probably not. Did you say anything to him about it? No. Did you say anything to Vivian about it? No. Did anyone in your little social circle think maybe they should tell their friend that he was being an asshole to someone's husband? Jack, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You all sat there and watched while someone humiliated me in my own home, and you thought it was entertaining. You participated in it. You enabled it. We didn't mean you didn't care. There's a difference. And now that there are consequences for that behavior, suddenly everyone's concerned about Vivian's well-being. She made a mistake, Jack. One mistake. She made a choice, and now she gets to live with it. But her career will survive or it won't. That's not my problem anymore. Jack, please. I know we didn't handle Saturday night well, but you didn't handle it at all. You just enjoyed the show. We're sorry. No, you're not. You're worried about your friend facing consequences, and you want me to make those consequences go away. But I'm not the understanding husband anymore, Greg. I'm not going to smile and pretend everything's fine while you all laugh behind my back. Nobody's laughing now? No, they're not. And that's the point. I hung up and ordered another beer. Outside, the city was settling into evening, lights beginning to twinkle in office buildings and restaurants. Somewhere out there, Vivian was probably sitting in Trent's apartment, crying about how her cruel husband had destroyed her life. Her friends were probably rallying around her, telling her she deserved better, that I was being unreasonable. They were right about one thing. She did deserve better. She deserved a husband who would put up with her disrespect, her selfishness, her casual cruelty. She deserved friends who would enable her worst impulses and tell her she was always right. Unfortunately for her, she'd married a man who had higher standards than that. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Trent. We need to talk. I typed back, no, we don't. Please, I need to explain. You explained plenty this morning. I was drunk. I said things I didn't mean. You said things you meant but shouldn't have said out loud. There's a difference. Jack, Please. I love her. I stared at that text for a long moment, then typed back, "Then you should have thought about that before you bragged about sleeping with her to a bar full of strangers. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Now live with it." I blocked his number and finished my beer. Tomorrow, I'd look at houses. Next week, I'd start the divorce proceedings. Next month, I'd be living a completely different life. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to what came next. The placeholder had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to play the game anymore. Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away and building something better. But first, there was one more move to make, one final message to send to everyone who thought they could treat me like a fool and get away with it. I pulled out my phone and started typing. By morning, everyone would understand exactly what happened when you underestimated Jack Avery, and they would never, ever make that mistake again. Epilogue. The new foundation. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of my new house, watching the sunrise over 20 acres of my own land. The house was everything the penthouse wasn't: solid, honest, built to last. I'd designed it myself and supervised every detail of the construction. No compromises, no committee decisions, no input from people who thought they knew better. It was perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete Morrison. "Saw the article in the Business Journal. Congratulations on the expansion." The article. Right. My construction company had just landed the biggest contract in its history, a $50 million mixed-use development downtown. The same project that Vivian's law firm had been hoping to get the legal work for. They hadn't gotten it. I typed back, "Thanks. Want to come out this weekend? I'm breaking in the new workshop." "Wouldn't miss it. Beer's on me." I smiled and put the phone away. Life was good. Better than good. It was exactly what I'd built it to be. The divorce had been finalized 2 months ago. Vivian had tried to claim half of everything, but her lawyer had quickly discovered that most of everything had been purchased before the marriage, or with money that could be traced directly to my business. She'd walked away with her car, her clothes, and a small settlement that would keep her comfortable for about a year if she was careful. She wasn't being careful. According to the city's gossip network, which still reached me through Pete and a few other friends, Vivian and Trent had lasted exactly 6 weeks after my departure. Turns out that a relationship built on betrayal and mutual selfishness wasn't as romantic as they'd imagined. Who could have predicted that? Trent had indeed been cut off by his family, just as I'd suspected that night at Murphy's bar. His trust fund was gone, his apartment was gone, and he'd moved back in with his parents in Connecticut. Last I heard, he was working at a car dealership and living in his childhood bedroom. Vivian had tried to maintain her lifestyle for a while, but without my income to support it, reality had set in quickly. She'd moved into a small apartment across town and was working longer hours to pay bills she'd never had to think about before. Her social circle had gradually drifted away as the novelty of her drama wore off, and she couldn't afford to keep up with their expensive tastes. Sienna had called me once, about a month after the divorce was final. She'd wanted to tell me that Vivian was struggling, that she was sorry for everything that had happened, that maybe I could find it in my heart to help her out. I'd listened politely, then explained that Vivian was a grown woman who'd made her choices and could live with the consequences. I'd also mentioned that I was doing very well, thank you, and that my new life was everything I'd hoped it would be. Sienna hadn't called again. The funny thing was, I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had driven me through those first few weeks had burned out, leaving behind something cleaner and more sustainable. Indifference. Vivian was no longer my problem, my responsibility, or my concern. She was just someone I used to know who'd made some poor decisions. I walked back into my house built with my money, designed to my specifications, and made coffee in my kitchen. Through the window, I could see the workshop I was building, the garden I was planning, the life I was creating from scratch. My phone rang. Margaret Chen. "Jack, I have someone who wants to meet you, a developer from Boston who's looking for a general contractor for a resort project in Maine. $100 million job. I'm listening. He specifically asked for you. Said he'd heard about your work and your reliability. Reliability. That was a good word. It meant someone who could be counted on, who delivered what he promised, who didn't create drama or complications. It meant someone who was definitely not a placeholder. Set up the meeting, I said. I'm interested. After I hung up, I walked out to my deck again and looked out over my land. Somewhere in the city, Vivian was probably getting ready for work, dealing with the reality of a life that was smaller and harder than the one she'd thrown away. Somewhere in Connecticut, Trent was probably selling cars and wondering how he'd ended up back where he started. And here I was, standing on my own land, looking at my own house, planning my own future. Free from people who didn't respect me, didn't appreciate me, and thought I was just keeping their seat warm until something better came along. I'd learned a lot over the past 6 months. I'd learned that kindness without boundaries is just enabling. I'd learned that loyalty without reciprocity is just foolishness. And I'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for people is let them face the consequences of their choices without trying to rescue them. Most importantly, I'd learned that I was never a placeholder at all. I was the foundation, the solid, reliable base that everything else was built on. And when I removed that foundation, everything else collapsed. The people who'd laughed at me that night had learned that lesson too, though it had taken them longer to figure it out. My phone buzzed with one final text from a number I didn't recognize. Jack, this is Vivian. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better than what I gave you, and I hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were over. Some chapters were closed. Some people belonged in the past, and that's exactly where they were going to stay. I had a future to build, and for the first time in years, that future belonged entirely to me. The placeholder had become the only player that mattered, and that was exactly how I wanted it.